All right, we're going to finish the show with a game of over-under. I will say a statement, and you'll tell me if it's an overstatement or an understatement. Start with you, Kate. The Patriots remained unbeaten with a come-from-behind win over the Giants. The Giants are the biggest threat to the Patriots winning the Super Bowl.
It's a wildly true statement. It's a dead-on statement. I absolutely think so, and it has a little bit to do with the fact that I am a Giants fan, so I don't want that to be too muddled. Also, you find out Cruz is out for the year, Victor Cruz, but I think the Giants just picked up Hakeem Nicks, so that's a great addition for Eli to throw to.
That's a real scale tipper.
JPP is back, and of course, I mean, for me, this is a historical belief, right? Like, every time the Giants win the Super Bowl, they beat the Patriots, and they also seem really mediocre during the regular season. So for the way I feel right now, my team's pretty mediocre, and the Patriots are undefeated, and we played them really well. That seems to me like setting up the pieces toward a Giants Super Bowl victory.
You know, I have to admit, I thought it was a massive overstatement until you mentioned that they'd signed Hakeem Nicks. And wow, now that's completely changed what I thought. It's, of course, an absurd overstatement. The Giants, are they even going to be in the playoffs? I mean, if they go 8-8 and the Cowboys go 8-8, you know, that's down to division record. But that neglects the Carolina Panthers, the Arizona Cardinals, all kinds of other teams that are real threats to the Patriots, not the New York Giants.
Oh, so you went rational on me, is what you did.
Yes.
Fine.
Vikings will shut down the Packers this weekend and run away with the division.
That is an overstatement. Clearly, the Vikings are very good, but their record, they still have Atlanta, Seattle, Arizona, and 2 games against Green Bay. Green Bay's schedule is not near that difficult to finish out the year, and people are completely overreacting right now to Green Bay. Yes, they lost 3 in a row, but I think in the end it'll be Green Bay at the top of that division. Vikings will be in the playoffs. They'll be good, but it's a little silly to say they're going to run away with that division.
Right. Well, understatement, although I'll pull back on the run away with the division, but I do think they're going to beat the Packers, which is why I'm going with that. I think Aaron Rodgers' numbers actually, even though he's having a year that we think is bad for him, they're actually better than they really even should be. I mean, if you look back on the whole season, he got so many chunks of yardage on free plays where there's a penalty and he reeled off 30, 40 yards. They haven't had that in the last month, which is part of why you're seeing this complete dip in their offense. So it feels like, even right now, that Packers offense isn't good, and it's even better than it actually is. So I have concern for them, and I think the Vikings are going to beat them.
Mark Sanchez will start for the Eagles this weekend versus the Bucs. The Eagles are better off with Sanchez as the starter.
Overstatement. No. I mean, especially after that pick in the end zone last week. I mean, that's the kind of thing that Sanchez is always doing, that just rips the heart out of your team. Also with Bradford, no, he wasn't lighting the world on fire, but he was kind of finding a rhythm with Chip Kelly's offense, and I think he was heading somewhere that could be way better for the Eagles than what we saw from Sanchez.
He was headed to below 500 is where he's headed. His record as an Eagle quarterback, below 500. Mark Sanchez's record, 4-4 as an Eagle. It can't be worse. Look, Mark Sanchez, I don't know if he's going to be better, but he can't be much worse.
I thought in Chip Kelly's offense you could just stick a broomstick back there and they'd be fine.
That's what we all thought,
That's
right?
what we all thought.
Now, were we better or worse than the usual crew? What do you think?
Oh, don't ever ask that question.
I know this. Let's see your shoes.
I'm going to look at my Twitter.
Let's see these kicks. Your last TV appearance of the year.
Fair
feedback.
Right?
I'm going to check out Twitter right now.
I want to show you. Look at these shoes. Johnny Manziel has played relatively well for the Browns at quarterback, and yesterday his head coach, Mike Pettin, praised his performance against the Steelers, where he passed for a career-high 372 yards, but added he was not prepared to put Manziel ahead of Josh McCown on the depth chart. Basically, when McCown gets over his injured ribs, he is the starter. What say you? Should Manziel be the starter for the Cleveland Browns?
Clearly, based solely on how you evaluate your investment. The Cleveland Browns invested a number 22 pick in the first round in Johnny Manziel. And do we know yet what Johnny Manziel is, what he can be, what his ceiling is? I don't think we do. I've heard guys like Chris Carter on this network say he's already seen enough. Johnny Manziel has showed nothing that would suggest he can be an NFL quarterback. But I would suggest you need to see more. You might as well find out, because one thing you do know when you're evaluating these investments is Josh McCown is not the quarterback of the future for the Cleveland Browns. Now, the coach of the Cleveland Browns has many different things he has to factor in, such as whether or not he can keep his job, whether or not he needs to win a few more games to keep his job. what his locker room thinks. Are you letting go of the season? Are you saying we're done? They are 2-8. But if you start Johnny Manziel and not Josh McCown, does that say the season is over? He has to factor all those things in. By the way, he also has to factor in, will Johnny Manziel be disciplined by the NFL? Do I name this guy my starter, and in 2 weeks from now, he has to serve a suspension from the NFL? That would be a little awkward, again, to yo-yo it back and forth. He has to factor all those things in. But ultimately, I think Jimmy Haslam, the owner of the Browns, has to say, I got to know what we invested in. I got to know where our money was spent. Because I got to know if we're going to move on or this guy can help us in the future. And the only way to find that out is to put him on the field and see if he can play. Johnny Manziel should be starting the rest of the season if the NFL will allow him to.
I agree with you that we as fans feel like, and I don't think we have, seen enough of Manziel to know whether he can be an NFL QB. And certainly I trust the opinion of a lot of these NFL analysts who are saying they don't think that he is an NFL QB. But something about the way that the Browns are talking about him suggests to me that they feel like they've already made a decision.
Sorry to interrupt. I was just told that Jay Glazer sent out a tweet that says that the Browns have made a decision that Johnny Manziel will be the starter for the rest of the season.
Glad they're listening to me. There we go. I'm glad they listened to me.
No, but I agree.
Well, it's just a tweet now. Just a tweet.
No, I mean, I think that's the right decision. I think it's the right decision, and for a lot of the reasons that Will said, in that, he had one start his rookie year, he's got a couple starts now, he hasn't played much this year. I don't think as a fan or somebody watching the NFL, I have enough information to say, can this guy play in the NFL? I was saying that it felt like the Browns kind of were really reluctant up until that tweet, and especially with what Pettine has been saying about him, to name him the QB as if they internally feel like they've decided something about him. So I feel like whether they have or haven't, it's either at 2-8, play him to see if you're right that you need to take a QB in the draft coming up and maybe another first rounder. And if you're wrong and he proves something to you, well, that's good too, because for them at this point, it's win-win playing Johnny. I mean, prove it to your fans. If you think he's not good enough because of what you've seen in practice, well, then prove it to them by playing him and showing it on the field.
From an ownership perspective, you're absolutely right. It's win-win. If he turns out to be an NFL quarterback, you've got one. If he turns out not to be, you need to move on. But from Pettine's perspective, it's not necessarily win-win. If Johnny Manziel neglects to win another game for the rest of this year, Mike Pettine might also not have a job. So I understand what he's doing, but again, you have to think about this from ownership's perspective, and you have to deal with certainties. We're certain of only one thing in this equation. We're not certain whether or not Johnny Manziel's an NFL quarterback. We're not certain whether he's not an NFL quarterback. But we are certain that Josh McCown is not the quarterback of the future for the Cleveland Browns. So that option should be off the table. Go find out the uncertainties at this point. Go find out what you have.
You would hope, but you would doubt, knowing the Cleveland Browns, that kind of communication was happening between ownership and coach. That, look, you're 2-8, you're worried that if you go 3-13, you're out of here, so you're trying to fight to 5-6 wins with a mediocre quarterback? Let's take that option off the table. That would be good communication between owner and coach, but historically speaking, at least with these people in power and this coaching staff, I would doubt that kind of communication is taking place.
It looks like they might have.
Possibly.
And isn't it more than just I'm picking a player, you're more picking a philosophy. It's almost like the head coach has to swallow his pride. When you put Josh McCown out there, he's running this play. When you put Johnny Manziel out there, you're like, go get him, buddy. You kind of take yourself out of the equation. He's almost putting the entire offense in Johnny Manziel's hands, and that's kind of a scary thought for a coach, as you said, that may be on the hot seat. We got to move on. We're going to ask what you guys think is the biggest threat to the Patriots coming back to win the Super Bowl. What team could it be? Perhaps the New York Giants? That question and more when First Take returns.